And are being joined by Michael Dembinski, British-Polish Chamber of Commerce. Good afternoon, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good afternoon.
So let's take a closer look at this London Defence Conference. What has been established? What kind of conversations could be taking place behind the scenes? What are your guesses?
I think we've heard a lot here about the word deterrence, and this really is crucial. If we look at the prospects of a Trump presidency and America making an isolationist turn and cutting back its support for Ukraine and its support for NATO, then Europe really needs to figure out how it can stand on its own. I think one of the key differences between the United States and the European Union is the fact that the United States is a federal nation. It has just now passed through Congress the National Defense Authorization Act for 2025. There's $886 billion earmarked for defense spending by the United States. One budget, one organization, the Department of Defense in the Pentagon. In the European Union, it's spread across 27 different nations, 27 different military industries trying to work together in terms of finding common standards, and this is hard work politically.
So now, what about national preparedness, as it is also a topic at this conference? How does that deter adversaries?
Absolutely. If we look at game theory, if we take the classic game, the prisoner's dilemma, you see that weakness, that giving in to an opponent who is continually defecting against you does not pay off. You can play the game a million times with computers playing against each other. And the optimal variant, the optimal strategy for not losing in prisoner's dilemma is never to cooperate with an opposition that is doing you down. So if you see aggression being prepared against you, prepare to fight that back. As Lenin said, that if you push in the bayonet and you feel mush, keep pushing. But if you push in the bayonet and you feel steel, then stop. And Putin plays by Lenin's playbook. Nothing new there. Putin only respects force and the threat of force. So giving in to Putin, making concessions to Putin, we have seen since 2004 onwards, we have seen this just does not work. The only language that Putin understands is a formidable opponent that is not going to give in to the notion that might is right. We are fighting here, defending rather not only Ukraine, not only Europe, but the whole of civilization against an ethos that might is right. That might isn't right. The rule of law must be seen to prevail.
So let me go back to the topic of the European Union. As you rightly pointed out, consensus is of primary importance here. And of course, we have the elections to the European Parliament round the corner happening on June 6th. So I wonder, do you think there will be some changes to the European policy post-election?
Very interesting question. It very much depends. And we can also see the influence of Russia here. And you can see this on Polish social media very clearly. You can see these voices that are raising doubts in Polish people's minds, and this is the same right across the European Union. It's the far left and the far right, so it's not just like in the old days when it was just a tiny group of communists who are pushing the Soviet Union's line. No, this is completely different. This is social media used as a warfare platform. This is part of Russia's military doctrine to use the West's weaknesses against the West. So we must be careful not to buy into any Russian narratives as we cast our votes for the European Parliament.
And speaking about elections, I mean, Rishi Sunak has just announced that early elections will be happening in the UK. So do you think there will be some policy changes here? What can we expect?
I think it'll be steady as she goes with the UK. I think that who really runs Britain's defence policy is not the here today, gone tomorrow ministers of defence. It's the Department of Defence, the Ministry of Defence rather, in the UK. It's the British Armed Forces. They know what to do. They're highly professional. They've had their wings trimmed a bit by politicians who keep snipping away at their budget. But at the end of the day, the British Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office and the British Ministry of Defence will be pursuing a constant line, whatever the outcome of the 4th of July general elections in the UK.
And now, as we are also speaking of and about defense policy, I wanted to ask about your opinion on the Eastern Shield, of which we have recently learned when Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced that such a project is in the making. How does this fit into Poland's broader security strategy and deterrence?
Well, I think this is crucial to line up the countries that are actually on the border, that are touching Russia physically, to implement a much closer defence strategy. And it's also interesting to note that it is the countries that have had direct experience of Soviet or Russian invasion, of mass deportations of their peoples, that are the most resolved, the most resolute against Putin's aggression. Countries like Finland, like Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, to a lesser extent, Slovakia, Hungary, these countries did not suffer mass deportations by the Soviet Union or indeed earlier in their histories. So from that point of view, Donald Tusk's weaving together of a stronger eastern border is crucial.
Sir, and let me turn to Ukraine for a second, because we've mentioned deterrence and preparedness and things of this sort. But recently, Volodymyr Zelensky and Dmytro Kuleba, they made a request towards the allies to get more involved by shooting down Russian missiles over Ukrainian territory. Do you think that such a request was warranted, and how should the allies respond to this?
I think what we've seen since the very beginning, since the launch of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, is that every time Ukraine asks the West for something, the West hesitates. It waits, it waits, it waits. Finally, it gives in and it hands over the HIMARS missiles or the M1 tanks. We're still waiting for the F-16s. And there is no apocalypse forthcoming from Russia. We've seen that this is bluff and bluster from Putin. So I think from the simple humanitarian point of view of saving the lives of innocent civilians who are getting bombarded day and night by Russian drones and bombs and missiles, that this needs to be forthcoming, this assistance.
And now what about, I'd like to go back to the point that you made that Putin only understands strength. Does the West understand how to, let's say, handle Putin?
As I said, it depends who you are and where you sit. If you are Spain, for example, or Ireland, you have literally no experience of what it's like being under the Soviet boot or under experiencing Russian oppression. But those countries further east that have had that historical experience have a completely different perspective. And it's important for Poland and for the other countries on those border lands to get that message across to our compatriots at the western ends of the European Union.
So when it comes to getting the message across, let's now fast forward to after the European elections, and the president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has said that if she retains her position, she will want to create a new role, which will be a defense commissioner. Now, some are saying that Radosław Sikorski would make a good candidate. What do you think? Just how important would it be to have representatives of Poland, Central Eastern Europe in these positions?
I think it would be crucial. On the one hand, it would be sad to lose Radek Sikorski as Poland's foreign minister. On the other hand, it would be a role that is mightily needed by the European Union. It's so important to have a voice, someone who understands at first hand, because this is a guy who was in Afghanistan during Soviet occupation, fighting against the Soviet army at the time. But it's very important to have that voice right at the top of the European Union where it's heard. For decades, it was the voice of the eastern border countries of the European Union have been largely ignored as being exaggerated or hysterical. Estonia knows what it was like to have a significant proportion of its population physically loaded onto cattle trucks and deported into the heart of the Soviet Union. We will not have this happening to us again, ever, historically, ever. And so it is far more important to have someone like Radek Sikorski in Brussels getting that message across to the people of Western Europe who have not experienced this, what it is like and what we need to be doing collectively to ensure it never happens again.
Michael Dembinski, British-Polish Chamber of Commerce, thank you, sir, for being with us this afternoon. Much appreciated.
You.